Would you like to be able to paint like this, or maybe like this? Well, you can, because I will show you in this video how I painted all these artworks. And I will show you the method that I used. This method is quite straightforward. You can do it yourself. You just need to follow each step. Learning to paint requires training, of course, but the beautiful thing with this method is that it's repeatable and it guides you step by step through the process of creating beautiful pieces of art. And if you follow each step carefully, you will be able to achieve great results from the get-go. And while you're using the method, you'll at the same time train yourself and acquire the skills that you need to become a technical oil painter. So, if you're like me, a bit impatient and looks to get quick results, this method is definitely for you. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into it. The first thing to do is to decide what to paint. This method lets you choose almost anything you like, anything that's suitable for an oil painting. You can choose an existing artwork. You can also pick a photo, maybe of your kid, of your mother, or your spouse, or your friend, or anyone you like. You could also choose a photo from your summer vacation or some nice occasion that you want to capture and frame and have up on your wall or give to someone that you love. Choose something not too complicated to start with. If you're new to painting, you'd be better off choosing an image without too many details. So stick to something quite simple. The main thing here is to choose something that you really like, because it's supposed to be fun to paint. You should be excited to get your own version, your own painted version of this image. So pick something that you really enjoy, not too big and complicated, and something that excites you. When choosing something to paint, you need to get a photo of it. If you, for example, want to portray your spouse, you could paint from real life and have him or her to stand model for you. But your spouse will need a lot of patience, and it's also much easier for you if you have a photo to paint from, because then you don't have to take all the decisions on how to transform the complicated 3D world scenery into a flat 2D image. Those decisions require a lot from you. It's great to do that. You learn a lot from it, but if you want those quick results, this method is designed to narrow down the decisions for you as much as possible. The photo needs, of course, to be good enough to paint from. The resolutions and the colors need to be right, because you will aim to capture those exact colors from the photo later on. If the image isn't sparkling enough to begin with, maybe you need to adjust it a little in an image editing tool like Photoshop or Lightroom. There are also great free tools that you can use like GIMP or Krita or Canva. So choose something that you feel comfortable with. And now let's go on to the next thing. Let's prepare the canvas. The canvas needs to have approximately the same proportions as the original. If you don't have the exact same proportions, you'll be able to adjust them a little before you start to sketch and paint. I usually bring the original photo into PowerPoint. You can use other tools as well. There are free tools, for example, Google Presenter. The main thing is that you can create a rectangle and place it on top of the original photo. The rectangle will represent the canvas that you paint on. So you need to give the rectangle the exact proportions of the canvas, so that when you compare the rectangle to the photo, you can see the mismatch. Then you can crop and adjust the original accordingly. I do this quite meticulously because when we start to sketch, we want these measurements to be precise. You will see that it's worth your while doing this. The canvas also needs to be prepared. I don't like to paint on a white, unprepared canvas. I paint with primer color on the bottom. I usually use acrylic paint for this. You can also use oil paint, but acrylic paint dries much faster. So when I start on a new canvas, that's what I usually use. I like to have an earthy color, maybe an umber or some grayish tones or reddish. You need some value that is neutral. And the reason is that it's easier to hit the colors on top of it. If the difference in value is too big, then it can be hard to take the right decision. So I try to make it easy for myself to give the background a quite neutral background. If the colors that you put on top are a little transparent, the bottom color will shine through as well. And I rather have a darker color in the bottom and add lighter colors on top. Now the canvas is prepared. Let's go to the sketching. When sketching, your eyes are your best tools. However, they can often mislead us as well. That's why we measure the key positions of the original. We want to find the main lines that create the shapes of the image. We focus on those places in the image where two lines meet or where a line changes direction. We measure both the X and Y positions to get the exact right spot. Then we measure the corresponding spot on the canvas to know exactly where to make a mark. Those marks will guide the outlines of your object in the image. You measure as much as you need. If you're new to drawing and painting, the measurements will be very useful. And you'll probably need a lot of them then. But once you have the main lines of your image, the ones that make up the overall shapes, then it's much easier to fill in the details that relate to those lines. When you get bolder, you can skip the measurements and make your decisions without measuring tool. The ruler can then serve as a checking device to make sure that you get it exactly right. You go through the whole image like this and make the sketching for the whole painting. When you sketch to prepare for a painting, it's important to focus on the outer lines. Just ignore any shadows and nuances. The main thing now is to get the outlines around every colored area right. You will fill in the colors later on. Now it's time to bring in the paint. It's time for mixing the colors, and now you need some patience. It's not always easy, but when applying paint on the canvas, you need a lot of patience before you go to the canvas. Stay on the palette as long as you can. You need to check the original very much, to have it on the screen right beside the canvas, so that you can continuously check the colors and to get them exactly right. When I paint, I like to make it easy for myself. I only use 5 different colors when I paint. I use umber, I use ultramarine blue, I use alizarin crimson, which is a red color, I use cadmium yellow, and I use titanium white. And from these few paints, I can mix just about any color. And by narrowing down the number of tubes of color, the result will gain as well, because the colors will match better together. When you have those few colors, few tubes of color, they will match more easily. So you need to learn to mix the colors correctly and make sure that you get as close to the original colors as possible. And what I do to get those colors right is to think of them both in terms of value and in terms of hue. Firstly, I focus on the value, and the hue is secondary. And once I got the value right, I can tweak the details of the hue. It's important to have both these aspects of the color in mind when you're mixing. The outlines that you created on your canvas will now guide you so that you know exactly where to apply the colors on the canvas. So now we can do it. Let's get to the painting. When I paint, I start with the darker tones and the big areas. I don't concern myself too much with the details. In fact, I don't concern myself at all with them right now. Instead, I try to find the right colors for those larger areas of the painting to get a feel of the whole. A colored area will often have many nuances in it as well. I try to find a middle tone of those colors, and later on I can go in and work with the details. And I usually work with maybe 3 different nuances of a colored area, and I usually start with the darkest ones. The main purpose in the beginning is to get an overall feeling right so that you can compare the different colors to each other and fine-tune them in relation to each other. I try not to see the objects really at this stage. I try to focus on what color a specific spot in the painting should have, and I don't care really if it's a bit of fabric or if it's a chin or a background. I just focus on the color. Once I got the canvas covered with the different colors, I get a feel for the whole and I can start to add more nuances in it. The painting is usually not that pleasant at first, but I rest assured that the painting will come alive later on when we get into the details. So let's go into it. I want to bring forward the nice shimmering of the fabric and the surface of the materials on the canvas. I want to be able to get a sense of how these materials feel. It's also at this stage I add the highlights and niceties and small details. So this is where the painting really will come alive. There are certain places in a painting that your eyes are drawn to. I like to give those areas a little extra attention. Since I like to paint people, faces are obvious example of this, where I need to lay more focus. But depending on what you paint, there can be many other stars of the painting, so to speak, where you need to put extra attention before you can feel satisfied with it. So that's it. Now we've gone through the whole process of creating a nice piece of art, and if you follow along and carefully go through each step, you will be able to create tremendous artworks pretty soon. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of my method and that you found it valuable. Please like and subscribe and share to get more tips on how to paint and to see how I do when I paint. I'm also happy to get your comments and thoughts, of course, and if you want to try this method yourself, there's a link below to an online training that will walk you through these exact steps and help you to master it. So, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.